Man to bring a championship to the city of Cleveland a very long time ago was asked about Johnny Manziel at a Cleveland charity event last night. This might surprise you. Brown said he wants the team to keep Johnny. Quote, "I don't want to see him traded or anything like that. I just think that's never the answer to anything. Your leadership has to be able to deal with players, and I don't think that Johnny is a bad guy. But I think he needs someone to deal with him, give him an opportunity to be the nice Johnny, the intelligent Johnny." Stephen A., do you agree?
Respectfully, I don't. And I utter the words respectfully because obviously Jim Brown is an iconic figure. He's somebody that, I know a little bit personally. We've communicated on several occasions, over the years. And he's one of those individuals that I give that tag E.F. Hutton to. When he speaks, I listen. He's one of the godfathers, one of the pioneers. And the level of respect that I have for him cannot be measured. I don't believe he's right in this situation, however, because I think the one thing that he's ignored or may have gotten by him in all of this is that, the heart and compassion that he has for folks who make mistakes and, the need for forgiveness and to move forward, as well as him accurately highlighting how modern day coaches, executives, and franchises overall need to do a better job of communicating with today's generation of athletes. What I believe that he's overlooked is the fact that Johnny Manziel, to some degree, may be acting up. It could be because he has a problem, but it could also be because he genuinely has a problem with being in Cleveland. He does not want to be there. And if you don't want to be there, you shouldn't be there. And that's the thing. You don't force somebody to just sit there and endure a level of unhappiness that clearly Johnny Manziel must be enduring. He's from Texas. He's come from a very affluent background. He's not from the streets. He's not starving. He's not going to starve. And so when you take it from that standpoint, he is a privileged individual who sometimes comes across as just that. So it's bad enough that he may have his issues, and it's bad enough that the Cleveland Browns have that challenge. But then you also can't contribute to his happiness by asking him to stay in a place where he's given every indication that he doesn't want to be, where he doesn't want to be at. You just don't need to do that. So I respect where Jim Brown is coming from on its face. But as you dig deeper into whether it's the psyche, the resume, the history of Johnny Manziel, he does not want to be there. He doesn't want to be a part of the Cleveland Browns. If you sat up there and told Johnny Manziel he was going to be a Dallas Cowboy, he was going to be a Houston Texan, that brother would be so happy he wouldn't know what to do with himself. He doesn't want to be in Cleveland. That is why I disagree with Jim Brown. I think that's the part that he's missing in all of this. You don't force somebody to stay someplace where they're not wanted. And Jim Brown would never go for that, because if you look Jim Brown in the face and tell him you didn't want to be a part of his team or a part of his franchise, Jim Brown would push you out the door quicker than you could say your own damn name.
I hear everything you just said. Maybe a month or so ago, I would have agreed with everything you just said. And now I'm having deep mixed emotions about this topic and how it's going to play out.
Right.
I hear you about maybe Johnny just doesn't want to be in Cleveland. That was a fact. He didn't want to be in Cleveland and play for the regime that was run by Ray Farmer and Mike Pettin, because it never clicked. They didn't want him. They didn't want to draft him. And he found that environment to be a loser's environment. We've had a big sea change in Cleveland, man. Big regime change, starting with Hugh Jackson and leading to two guys that I have a lot of respect for. I know they don't have any track record, but I'm going to say it again. Good things are about to happen in Cleveland thanks to Sashi Brown and Paul DePodesta, because they have high combined brain power. And I thought it was astonishingly significant that Hugh Jackson could have gone to your Giants. He knew it was sitting right there. They had the interview scheduled, and he sat with Sashi and Paul and immediately said, you know what? These guys are smart. I'm smart. I'm clicking with them. I know how to win at this sport of pro football because I've been around. These guys haven't been around, but they get it. And together, if we combine forces, we're going to make good things happen in Cleveland, Ohio. And Hugh Jackson said, I'm here. You got me. Cancel my interview with the Giants. You and I talked about this. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
Well, the reason why I say you're not wrong in anything that you're saying, but I don't think that you're giving enough cachet or credence to the ego factor as it pertains to Hugh Jackson. Hugh Jackson, you got to remember, if he goes to the Giants, Jerry Reese is your GM and he's a football guy. And he's surrounded by a bunch of football guys. DePodesta is coming from Major League Baseball. Sashi Brown, if I remember correctly, is a lawyer by trade.
Yeah. He's
so
got a sports background, but
yeah,
he's
sports
not,
background.
have an NFL background. Yeah.
Right. But
right.
even though they're two individuals, I'm not challenging that they're two individuals of very, very high intellect.
Trust me, they
Essentially, Hugh Jackson is the football guy.
Sure.
So what he's doing is he's not just a coach, but he's the football guy, buffered by two brilliant guys without a football background. So he's able, so if you're looking at it from that perspective, it's not just about, oh my God, they're so brilliant, they're so wonderful. It could easily also be about the fact that Hugh Jackson gets to do his own thing without quote unquote the title.
I'm with you.
And so that could have factored into the equation as well. So when you look at it from that perspective, isn't that a lot for Hugh Jackson to have to handle? Now you need him to babysit your quarterback?
Yep.
No way. No, it's not an ideal. It's not an idea. If this was just a matter of Johnny Manziel, the football player, then Jim Brown is right on the money. But if this is but everything else that comes with Johnny Manziel, you can't risk the distraction that it would be.
Hugh Jackson knew all too well what the competition is in the AFC North because he just went from Cincinnati to Cleveland, and he knows what the score is. Now you got to deal with those Bengals and those Steelers and those Ravens. It is hard, man. You were at the bottom looking up. You could have had Eli Manning, and after we talk about the dearth of African-American coaches, he could have worked with an African-American GM and Jerry Reese in New York. It seemed like the perfect fit from a distance to start with. And all of a sudden he said, I'll take the Browns. Wow.
Well, listen, Skip, when you look at it based on what I said, of course you would take the Browns job because it's your show. It's essentially your show. Whereas with the Giants, you got to remember, it could be changes because even though they got rid of Coughlin and kept everybody else, that Hugh Jackson coming in in year one, and Dallas is the favorite in the division, and the Eagles got a new coach in Peterson, and the Redskins are on to come up with Kirk Cousins, and they're the reigning, defending NFC East champions. There's a lot there as well, whereas in Cleveland, it's your baby, and you might get to have decision-making power that you otherwise would not have in New York. So those are things to consider as well, and you just don't want. You just don't want the risk. You don't want the risk of that distraction. I've spoken to Hugh Jackson several times.
What undercuts this whole premise is the fact that so far Hugh Jackson has completely ignored Johnny Manziel, has not spoken with him, has had other interviews with other key players, has interviews scheduled into next week, and no Johnny yet, and he's made you can infer from his comments he's not interested in going forward with Johnny Manziel. Go ahead.
I can tell you right now, a legitimate argument could be made that I've spoken to Hugh Jackson more than Johnny Manziel has since Hugh Jackson became the coach.
Well, I hope so. Well, you have, because Johnny's zero, I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. There you go.
Okay, so that's not a good sign for Johnny Manziel.
And I've spoken to Hugh Jackson 2 or 3 times. He was at the Cleveland Warriors game.
I know. I got that. Obviously, Johnny has unaddressed issues that we both talked to death, and I don't want to talk about it anymore because that has to get fixed first. But now let's get back to the great Jim Brown. First thing I wrote down was the first thing you said. Before we even did this topic, I wrote down, when Jim Brown speaks, I listen. And you opened up with that. So I'm listening. Jim Brown. Jim Brown sees in Johnny what I think I have seen in Johnny back to his first year at Texas A&M. Jim Brown sees star quality. He sees rare. He sees difference maker. If he can get a hold of himself and his circumstance, or if somebody can command Johnny's respect enough, as his leader, as his coach, as his GM, whoever that is, that Jim Brown is saying, don't give up on him yet. It will be a mistake to trade him. I can make the case it will. Now, do I want to see Johnny as the backup and heir apparent to my Dallas Cowboys? I do. Yeah, to my Cowboys, I do. You're probably right. This probably isn't the greatest fit. But if I were any of these new decision makers of the Cleveland Browns, I'd be a little queasy about dumping Johnny Manziel and watching him turn into something somewhere else.
Not in Cleveland. You could get away with getting rid of him in Cleveland because of all the problems he's
Well, no, I
caused
mean,
off the
you can
field
get
script.
away with it, but...
Some second thoughts because of Jim Brown.
I don't know. Listen, Jim Brown could be right. We could be having another conversation 5 years from today after Johnny makes his second Pro Bowl in Dallas, and you'd be saying, boy, those Browns, they could have...
Well, that would be because he wanted to be in Dallas.
Okay.
He doesn't want to be in Cleveland.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Well, maybe, but remember, remember, Johnny initially begged to be in Cleveland. He texted the quarterback coach on draft night and said, I hate to bring it back up, let's wreck the league together.
Because he wanted to be a first rounder.
Well,
If he didn't get picked by Cleveland, he was going to fall out of the first round, and he wanted to be a first rounder, and that was his lone shot.
Speaking of falling out, then now he's fallen out with LeBron James, and on that night, he and LeBron were close, right?
So Jim Brown, critical of their last first-rounder in Trent Richardson, but not Johnny Manziel, making things interesting for us. We move on. Last year, we saw Tom Brady pull off one of the greatest comebacks. It was pretty ridiculous in Super Bowl history. But is he getting fair recognition for it? We'll debate that after the break. Stay here.